Mr. Cuellar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Secretary, I appreciate the work that you do. As you know, I go to my hometown on the border, so I'm at the border every week. I get together with CBP officers and Border Patrol almost every week, so I know the men and women that work for y'all down there. Let me tell you, they're doing a heck of a job, and I want to commend them for the work that they do. I also want to say also is that, you know, this CBP enforcement action process, and I asked my staff to put this together. As you can see, Mr. Secretary, it's a complicated matter. It's a very complicated matter. Same thing for the arrest and removal process. It's a complicated matter, and I hope we can sit down in a bipartisan way and find some ways to address this, including if you're supplemental, I wish you would talk to the Department of Justice, because we added 50 new judge teams, and I think it was 2 days after we did the conference report, they sent out a letter and said, we're out of money because of interpreter costs. So we haven't hired any of the judges that we added. So we keep talking about adding judges, but there's a freeze on the judges that we just added in February. So I wish you would talk to them and make sure they make that as a supplemental. One issue that I want to bring up is, of course, trade. Every day there's more than $1.5 billion of trade between the U.S. and Mexico. As you know, you all moved 545 CBP officers down to the McAllen area. 15% of that came from the Laredo District, which is the largest port. We handle, when you put everything, 7 out of every 10 trucks that come from Mexico, across Mexico, our border is through our port of entry. You and I spoke and gave you 5 different ideas. And I think out of the 545, y'all have brought back 225 back out of the 545. I asked you to spread the pain and go, without due respect, naming any cities here, but any of the cities that, you know, instead of just taking them from the border, spread the pain and bring CBP officers. I asked you about overtime. I asked you about cap waivers. I asked you about volunteer forces and, you know, the recently retired officers also. Coast Guard also, and so I gave you different ideas. Even the public-private partnership law that we passed some years ago, where the private industry is willing to pay to get some of this work process. We still, you know, we still need to do more, and I really would appreciate your help so we can get our CBP officers back. They should not be changing diapers. They should not be making food. I think that's, you know, there's another way to address that, and this is why we requested in this new budget, and hopefully the committee will go with this, 1,200 new entry positions for Border Patrol and CBP, where they can do everything except arrest people, but I don't think trained officers should be changing diapers or making some of those changes. I know that's important work, but you know, the immigration issue should not affect the trade issue, which is a very important part. So I appreciate anything you can do to bring back those officers.
Thank you, Congressman, and obviously I share your concerns about law enforcement professionals, highly trained, working on care and custody issues, and obviously very concerned about CBP officers being diverted from their port of entry responsibilities, processing that incredible volume of lawful trade, as well as their counter-narcotics missions and other critical missions at the ports of entry. That was an immediate term response to a crisis in terms of the numbers in our custody and the time people were facing in custody, that we needed to provide some support to our Border Patrol agents. Obviously, we needed to start with folks who were nearby. That's why Laredo and some of the other land border ports of entry were most affected in that first tranche. We have expanded, as you noted, to additional field offices providing support. We've advised stakeholders in the aviation industry for international air arrivals at the seaports that there are going to be impacts in other areas as well. But we've done all of those recommendations. Increased overtime. We've put in cap waivers. We have volunteer forces now deployed, and we're hired annuitants as well. It's a bit of a process, but we're bringing on as many as we can. Because we need all hands on deck.
Yeah, I hate to interrupt because my time, and I want to stick to my 5 minutes. Do you know when we can get our officers back?
So that depends on the flow, and it depends on how successful we are in providing the volunteer forces and our contracting time for bringing in some of these contracted
Will
resources
you
to
spread
help.
the pain to other places? Because it's not fair that the Loretto district is taking 15% of the cut or transfers, and I really would appreciate your help on that. And
We
I'll
are
follow up. My
balancing.
time is up on that.
We are balancing across field offices, understand.
Thank you.